I am Sage Rountree. I've been teaching yoga for more than 20 years and teaching yoga teachers for most of them. Along the way in my career, I spent some time in public radio. I earned a PhD in English literature. I always feel like I have to say it like that. I work with the athletes at the University of North Carolina, which is near my home outside Chapel Hill, North Carolina. But training yoga teachers is the part that I love the most. Helping someone like you walk into a room feeling prepared, feeling steady, feeling free to actually see your students and be with them present in the moment. That's yoga. And that's the kind of work I love to do. Now, Comfort Zone Yoga is where I do that work. It's my virtual yoga studio focused on teacher development. I like to think of it as a home for yoga teachers who want to plan with more confidence and less Sunday night dread. Through a 200-hour and a 300-hour yoga teacher training, I do this. Through continuing education courses, I do this. Through my Prep Station membership, and I see some Prep Station members here, I do this. And through free gatherings like this one, I do this work. And once a month, we take one real teaching challenge and dig into it together. I'm going to do some teaching, and I'll save time for your questions so that you leave with something that you can put to work this week. I want to have you leave with something that you can use in your very next class, even if it's not a restorative yoga class. I'm going to give you a few tips about things that you can do in Shavasana that will make it the best Shavasana ever. Today's topic is one I get asked about a lot. This is a comfort zone conversation about restorative yoga, and specifically about the gap between a class that looks restful and a class that actually delivers rest. So before we begin, let me give a little spiel to explain why I call my virtual yoga studio Comfort Zone Yoga. As an endurance athlete myself, as the former coach to endurance athletes, and as the yoga teacher to several teams at the University of North Carolina, I have both experienced personally and also seen firsthand how little attention we pay to recovery. So many of us come to yoga to help build our comfort with discomfort. And while that is an important skill to develop, to explore our edges, to move beyond our comfort zones into our growth zones, and to develop the tools to stay focused and present out there in the growth zone along the uncomfortable edges, it is also hypercritical that we spend time at the other end of the spectrum and that we develop more comfort with comfort, that we are okay with the ease side of the effort and ease, the stira and sukha conversation, and that we can give ourselves time to refill our wells so that we can be more balanced and more calm and more kind people. This is really how we change the planet as yoga teachers, by giving people the tools to develop comfort with comfort, to expand their comfort zone from the inside out. It's not always to be working at the upper edge, the edge of intensity, but to also spend time at the lower edge, the edge of consciousness. And that is exactly where restorative yoga takes our students, to that other edge. And the great news for us as yoga teachers and as devotees of restorative yoga and maybe of the softer, more comfort-based practices of yoga is that when we spend time at the upper edge, if we try too hard, we injure ourselves, right? We tear a hamstring or a rotator cuff or something negative happens, we get injured. But when we spend time at the other edge, at the edge of consciousness, the worst thing that will happen is you will fall asleep and then you will receive a nap. And that is pretty great too, right? So we're looking to get into that sweet spot, that edge of staying awake, that edge of consciousness, that deep sense of ease in a restorative yoga class. Coming back into this main question, and this is the thing that I think you're asking, the thing that I know I have been asking myself when I am teaching a restorative class, or when I used to teach a restorative class before I developed this confidence in this craft in teaching restorative, is to be wondering, is this working? Are they relaxing? Because that's not really something that you can see from the outside, from your space toward the front of the room. You look around at everyone and they look well propped up and they look quiet, or maybe they don't quite look quiet and still you see them fiddling or twitching. And that small voice, that inner voice of doubt asks, is this actually doing what I think it's doing? Are they settling in, or are they just lying there uncomfortable, deciding yoga is not for them, or waiting for the moment this is going to end? And I ask myself that a lot in the early years of teaching restorative yoga. So know that if you have wondered the same thing too, you are in exactly the right room. And by the end of our hour together, I hope that I will have given you the tools so that you don't have to wonder, so that you will know how to set up a restorative shape so that it actually restores. You'll know what restorative yoga actually requires. You'll have some shifts that you can make in your very next class or your very next Shavasana. Because here's the thing that it took me way too long to learn: relax is not a cue. You may have heard me say this on my podcast on the same topic last week or in other settings, but I've seen this bumper sticker or this fridge magnet that says, never in the history of relaxing has anyone ever relaxed by being told to relax. So it's kind of like the Seinfeld, serenity now. Like, you can't just yell to yourself to relax. That's not how the nervous system works. Yet, as teachers, often we say to our students, like, we dim the lights, we prop everyone up, we use our softest voices, and we say, now just relax. It's not that simple. You'll still see people fidgeting. You'll see them twitchy, maybe half asleep. They might say that it was a nice class and then not come back for more. And the reason is very simple. It is that you cannot talk a body into rest. You can only set it up for rest. I had an amazing comment on a Threads post about last week's podcast episode by means of an aside here, where someone said they had taken a trauma-informed yoga teacher training and they were told for some trauma victims, just relax is what they hear before the trauma happens to them. So that's another thing to keep in mind. We can't just tell ourselves to relax. We can't just say like serenity now. We have to set up the conditions in which this relaxation can happen and then allow it to happen. So we can't force it. We can only set it up. The parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest side of the central nervous system, comes online when it gets evidence that it is safe to let go. It doesn't just happen because we tell it that it's okay to let go. It happens when we show it that it's okay to let go. So our job as yoga teachers shifts so that we stop leading or trying to force the relaxation to happen, and instead we start building the conditions where it can happen. That's us controlling the controllables, which is, of course, all we can ever do in the course of any effort, and teaching yoga prime among them. And this is the reframe that I want to stay in now for the rest of this hour, that restorative yoga isn't just gentle yoga with extra props. It is a different practice. It isn't yin yoga with longer holds. It is a different practice, and it's aimed at a different part of the nervous system, and therefore it has a method. So let's go in the next few slides into things that we can do to create the conditions. And these can happen, many of them, before the students even walk into the room. When we design the room, we are setting up these conditions for the nervous system to feel safe and then for relaxation to happen. So before you cue a single shape, the room is already doing half the teaching for you. And here are the three primary concerns. You want everything to be soft, you want it to be warm, and you want it to be comfortably dark. Let's talk about soft, because when I come down on my mat to show you a few things in a moment, I won't have the full prop set up that you would have in a restorative classroom. It's hard for you to see if I make the nest that I would really have if I were doing this practice for myself. This softness comes from cushioning every contact point between the body and the floor. So no part of the body is touching a cold, hard floor. I have my mat set up with the floor around me, but in a restorative workshop, in a really nice restorative class, I would lay out blankets across the mat, or even like cover the entire floor with mats, so that there is plenty of softness and no part of the body is touching the cold, hard floor. You also want it warm. If you can control the temperature in the room, upper 70s is generally pretty good. I bet you have had the experience of being too cold in a restorative class or a yin class or a yoga nidra. I have as well. Maybe some of you were with me at the Berkshire Yoga Festival 2 weekends ago, where we did a gentle yin and restorative class and we did a yoga nidra, and we didn't have much control over the temperature in the room. So here's where layers are really helpful. Here's where blankets are really helpful. As you get still and as your center As your nervous system settles down, your body temperature will drop. So a room that feels fine at the start for the students will likely feel pretty chilly 20 minutes in. And a room that feels warm for you as the teacher who's running around and delivering props and tucking everybody in and holding the space is a room that probably feels just right, if not cool for your students. And if they are cool, they're going to stay in alert mode. They won't slip into that parasympathetic side of the nervous system where we're trying to invite them to go. So we want to keep it as warm as we feasibly can without making it sweaty and having people swelter beneath the blankets. Then step 3, we want it to be dark, comfortably dark. The lights are low. Offer eye coverings. Eye pillows are really good for this. Eye masks are really good for this. You can probably find some if you're stocking your own prop cabinet for restorative, like at a dollar store or at your favorite mail order site. You can also use an ACE bandage. That's an original restorative yoga tip where there was a wrap that we would do to cover our heads, give ourselves some light pressure on the skull and cover the eyes. It can feel really great as long as you don't get claustrophobic with it. But the darkness is a sign. It's another sign to the nervous system that tells your body that the demands of the day are over. That's how we settle in at the end of every day, of course, closing our eyes, laying our heads down on our pillows. So getting that darkness is tapping into that same experience. It's also guiding our students from the external awareness toward the internal awareness. It's the process of pratyahara. And here's what I think many trainings might skip. In 20 years, I've seen the same scene play out a few times where a teacher has a beautiful restorative sequence, but it's taught in a room that is too bright, too cold, and the floor feels too hard. And the students just can't drop in, no matter how lovely the cueing is, no matter how peaceful the sequences are, and the sequence is, and how perfect the poses go together. If the room is not amenable to the relaxation, if the room isn't soft, if the room isn't warm, if the room isn't dark, then the props can't do their job. And when the props can't do their job, then the shapes can't do their job. So let's talk about how you can actually hold a body in the room. Like, what are these supports that the prop can do? I call these the 6 supports. And if you go to comfortzoneyoga.com/Shavasana, or I'll pop this in the chat right now. I think I have it in here, but just in case I don't, you will get a very nice yoga.com lost. A very nice demonstration of all 6 of these supports. I'm about to show you 3 of them, and we'll go a little bit deeper into some don'ts as well as some do's with each of these. But you'll get to see my adorable husband demonstrate as the recipient as I prop him up in all 6 of these supports. So that's how you can make Shavasana your students' absolute best Shavasana ever. And that's also a good business technique to leave them on a high note, to give them something that feels like there is more to yoga than just moving. There is some kind of interconnection that is afforded to you in a really well propped and guided Shavasana. So you'll get that outline if you come through and get the Best Shavasana Ever guide. And I'm about to show you 3 of these 6. And here's why they're all important and why they're all worth memorizing and they're all worth using, because Shavasana is where every restorative class lands. If you can master the art of setting things up, if you can master the supports there, then these supports will travel into any other restorative shape that you do, into supported child's pose, into sideline pose, into a reclining twist. You'll start to see like, oh, I understand now. These are the places that I want to pay extra attention to, filling in the holes between the body and the floor. Supported bridge, legs up the wall, all of these can take elements of these 6 supports. The prop placement is what shifts from shape to shape, but the supports, the areas that you're addressing, will stay about the same. So here are the 6. I'll read them to you off the slide that you see on screen. Something along the backs of the knees. The idea here is to relax the hip flexors and the low back. Something behind the head. There are a couple ways to do that. I'll show you those in a moment. Something underneath the arms. This is my absolute favorite, and this might be one that you haven't tried before. So if you happen to be in a location where you can follow along with that one, you got 2 blocks and some floor that you can lie down on, or 2 sofa pillows or 2 bed pillows and a space where you can lie down. Follow along with me when we get to arms in just a sec. So I'm going to show you the first 3 in depth. We'll do knee, head, and arm because these are the structural 3, the ones that build the frame of a supported body. If you get these wrong, nothing else is going to be landing in the same way. But when you get them right, then the body will have permission to let go, to stop holding itself up. If you've got some props handy, you can follow along with all of these. If not, just watch, and I'm going to show you each one. Well, hello. So you probably know about putting something underneath your student's knees in a Savasana. Let's see what looks like when you don't do that. If they're really tense, they may be like squeezing and gripping, and you don't even see the, watch my feet, that relaxation where the legs start to turn out away from center. So the first thing that you might already know to do is to take the bolster along the backs of the knees like this. This is a chunky bolster. It's a big guy. He's very rectangular. Where you are, you may have a rolled bolster, and that can feel super good too for reasons we're about to explore. But already, it's like, okay, this feels a little bit better. Because I have bent my knees, I'm inviting my hip flexors here to relax, and I can feel my low back can drop down toward the floor a little bit more. But there's an upgrade. This is one of my favorites. I'm going to take the 2 blocks and lay them so that they prop this into a bigger angle. And then I'll come down over it with the backs of my knees along this top edge. And this is just, I think, a happy coincidence because of the length of my shin bone. I can feel the cup along the back of my Achilles is kind of down along the bottom. And I'm going to show you something else we can do there. But, oh, yes, this is fantastic for me. This feels wonderful. This is filling up the space along the backs of my knees in a way that the chunky rectangular bolster couldn't do on its own when it was flat. And I've created this angle by putting the bolster on a diagonal ramp propped up on the blocks. That already feels pretty great. But I think I can make it feel even better. I'm just using props that I happen to have at our mountain place here. I don't have the full panoply of yoga props. This is literally a bath towel. I just rolled it into a tube, and I'm going to set that along the backs of my ankles. And I'll lie back down. Oh, yes. Now that feels absolutely great to me. So you see how I have filled in space. I filled in the space along the backs of my knees. It's a natural space to fill. And I filled in the space along the backs of my ankles. My feet are floating free here. Generally, that feels pretty good to me, but you could also play with a stack of blankets instead of a bolster so that the heels can rest down on the floor. And for some folks, that might wind up feeling even better. Do you see what I mean? I'm not as propped up with softness as I might be because I want y'all to be able to see. So there are a few stages of improving the situation down low by propping the backs of the knees. And you probably also know, while we're here and working on it, that there is this Stonehenge shape we can make where we've got these 2 blocks. They'll be supporting my calves, but from underneath the bolster. The bolster goes on top of it. My shins go over the bolster, and the bolster goes over the blocks. And that's another approach here that achieves the same effect of inviting my hip flexors to go short and slack. That is a magical place to be, the short and slack, where they're not engaging and they're not stretchy. They're just resting, and my low back can relax as well. So that is the knees. Now I'm going to break this down and show you some stuff to do with the head. This gets really personal. So you could create a neck roll, and when you are folding your props for restorative, you have to be very fussy, very princess and the pea. You don't want any zippers poking into your students or your own body. You don't want to have there be a lump. So we're not going to just stuff the towel together and set it down. We're going to be very deliberate about it. Oh, keep rolling this up. So here's one approach to the head that can feel really good. I'll make sure I get my abundant hair out of the way for you. Or I've got this roll against the back of my neck, and I've got some of the towel, or you could use a blanket to the same thing, working as some extra cushioning. I am fortunate enough to own a day spa, and I get a lot of facials at the spa for me. And I like the 90-minute facial, and the back of my head sometimes almost falls asleep being on the table for that long. I know, whack, cry me a river. But here, having this cushioning is very, very useful. So that's one way to do this. Another is to fold this again so that I've got this up against my ears. That's another way to journey toward pratyahara, toward sensory withdrawal. You're muffling everything in. Not everybody needs or wants a neck roll. And here's something you wouldn't want to do with a neck roll. I'll show you a few don'ts. You don't want to bring it in so big so that your chin is higher than your nose. And now the back of my neck has gotten really short and craned up. So we could get rid of the roll entirely. We could even experiment, make sure that this looks attractive, being Princess and the Pea with the folds, with having this be a pillow for that very sensitive back of my neck, the occipital ridge that goes numb on the facial table. Ah, that feels pretty good. While I'm at it, I wanted to remember to show you a don't for the leg support. You may have seen this in your own class. Sometimes you tell your students, put a bolster under your knees, and they wind up doing this. They stick the bolster way far down so that just their heels are on it. And I wouldn't have a fight with my student about whether that is a great idea, but I do think this is putting some extra pressure in my knee joint. And I am not here to fear monger. Like, your knee is capable of receiving some pressure. It just feels like I'm kind of hanging out in the joint in a way that is unpleasant to me. And if I saw a student doing that, I would come over and say, let me try upgrading you. And then if you don't like the way I do it, you can press this farther away, and I would draw the bolster in closer to them. All right. Here's the one I promised. This is my favorite, and it may not look like much, but I think it feels absolutely fantastic. This is the arm support. If we consider that bending the knees is helping your hip flexors relax, right? They're going into short and slack, because the job of the hip flexors is to flex the front of the hip like this. And when we have support and the knees are bent, then the muscle can get short and slack and not have to engage. Similarly, bending the knees is relaxing for the hamstrings, because the hamstrings do the knee bend, just like the hip flexors do the hip action. The hamstrings are helping with this bend. Hamstrings get to go short and slack. We're going to apply the same principle to the upper body and take the back of each wrist onto the short edge of the block so that the biceps get that same feeling of being short and slack, because the action of the biceps is to bend the elbow like this. It doesn't look like much, and it feels to me like everything. I find this so, so relaxing. If you are somebody who wears glasses, or you have students with glasses, you could then have them take their glasses and put their glasses just past their fingertips here, so you don't step on them while you walk through the room, and so that their faces get to relax and not have the glasses on them. So there is something absolutely wonderful that you could do. Let's say you had blankets instead. You could do that with a matching set of blankets. It would be, I think, a little strange to have two different props as I'm showing right now, but I don't have two blankets of the same kind. So those are 3 supports for you. I'm going to come back over to the big screen. Hopefully that was interesting to look at. I'm going to point out these other 3 that you see on the other side of this slide are to add some weight. A sandbag is a fantastic prop for that. You can make your own if you're at all handy with sewing. You can sew a bag, fill it up with sushi rice or sand. If you're doing sand, make sure that it is within a sealed Ziploc bag. Otherwise, you wind up with sand all over the floor, and that's not very relaxing for you, nor for your students if they get that grit on them. So weight over the hips can feel really nice, or a light weight over the sternum can feel really nice. A weight in the hands, when your hands go down on the blocks, can feel really nice. It can uncurl fingers that curl up from typing and driving. You set the eye pillow into the hand and it gets to open, and that can feel really great. Eye coverings are really fantastic. These may honestly be the single fastest down regulator of all the props to put that weight and darkness over your eyes. And then to add warmth, a blanket. Again, this doesn't demo very well, but you really want to be tucked in, a blanket from the collarbones to the feet, with it wrapped around the feet and maybe even under the heels can be a fantastic addition, because remember, the temperature will drop as the body settles. Now, here's where I want to remind you that there is even more than you see in today's slides in that freebie. It's called Best Shavasana Ever, and you can get it at comfortzoneyoga.com/Shavasana. If you're watching this later, I'll put the link in the show notes for you. Okay. Let's go on into some big picture questions, big picture issues about how to make restorative yoga actually restorative. Here are two things that can make or break your restorative class. Number one, time. And number two, what you do during the hold. Let's talk about time first. Students need longer in each shape than you might think. They probably need longer than what feels comfortable to you as the teacher. We are talking 3 to 5 shapes in a class, not 10, 3 to 5 shapes, held 15 to 30 minutes each. And I understand other teachers might say 5 minutes is plenty in a restorative pose. That is not my personal experience, and that is not the way that I teach it. And it would be interesting to have conversations with them about it. So how about you do your own experiment? Try holding something for 5 minutes, try holding something for 15 minutes, and get back to me on which one gives you more time to truly settle in. I feel, and you may have experienced this as you guide Shavasana, like there is a continental shelf out there after which something shifts. When you have the luxury of a 10-minute Shavasana, have you noticed, let me know in the chat, have you noticed that there is a moment probably about minute 5 or minute 7 or minute 8 where you can feel the room kind of collectively settle in and sigh? This takes a while. This usually doesn't happen within 5 minutes, especially if this shape is new to the students. Cutting it short will change everything, because this settling happens in layers. First, your body understands what's going on, where it is. The body gets quiet. The mind takes longer. The deep parasympathetic shift, the part that the students actually come to restorative yoga for, often doesn't arrive until after the point where, if you were nervous and you thought 5 minutes was the maximum amount of time that you would put students into these shapes, where you would call it and move them on to the next shape. And if you're pulling them out, even at 8 minutes in, because the silence of being there got uncomfortable for you, then you wound up getting so close, but not there. You ended the class right before it worked. You ended the shape right before it works. And this is what brings me to your real job during the hold. It is not to fill the silence with the sound of your voice and all the wise and relaxing things that you have to say. Your job is to close your mouth and breathe through your nose, which is my polite way of saying zip it. Close your mouth and breathe through your nose. And when you feel like saying something, bite your tongue, almost literally, possibly literally, wait a few more breaths. During a 15-minute hold, your job is to be a calm and a steady presence at the edge of the room. It is not to be the hero of the classroom. It is for you to be the watcher. It's for you to see where you could help students get even more comfortable, where you notice the head at an angle that's going to ache, where the chin is higher than the nose. And you come and offer one small adjustment where you reposition the bolster underneath the knees because it was really just underneath their feet. You might give a well-timed breath cue every now and then, just so that you can pull students back onto the conscious side of that consciousness edge, but it's not to talk the whole time. Constant talking keeps your students in alert mode. Your voice becomes just one more thing for them to pay attention to. It's pulling them out of that sense of pratyahara, of withdrawal, of inner awareness that we are looking for. Let the practice do the practice. Don't force it. Your presence and not your narration is the teaching. You are holding the space. You are not directing the space moment to moment. And here's another tip, transitions. If it took 3 minutes to get in to set the shape up, what if you tried to let it take 3 minutes to come out? That might be a slight exaggeration, but not much. Come out very slowly, come out with a pause on the way. Anything faster is going to undo some of the work you just did. Anything faster is going to jolt the nervous system. And you'll come right back out of the state you just spent 15 minutes building. Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit. Now you know the reframe, the conditions, not instructions. We aren't telling people just relax. To build the room first, you know 3 of the 6 supports for the best Shavasana ever, knees, head, and hands, and where to get the other 3. And you know the 2 things that can quietly break a class: rushing and talking too much. So less is more on talking, more is more on timing. And that is a real, hopefully usable, hopefully helpful taste of how I teach restorative yoga. So think about the season ahead for your students. We're going to talk about your questions in a moment. Your summer is overscheduled and the fall ramp up is coming and the holidays after that. I know it's only late June now, but this is all on the way and your students are walking in depleted. If you are in an area where it's really hot, they're currently walking in depleted and they want a class that actually lets them put down whatever they're carrying. And the teacher on the schedule who can hold that really well, that is a teacher that a studio keeps. That is a teacher whose classes are constantly filled. That is a teacher who gets requests for private lessons, for offering restorative workshops. And that is the teacher that students come back for. And that can be you if you can learn how to give your students this restorative yoga that actually restores. And you don't have to wait until you feel like you are zen, until your yoga practice has finally done its work and you have achieved liberation and enlightenment in order to teach restorative yoga. Because restorative yoga is really a craft that you can learn, like you can learn a language or like you can learn a musical instrument. It's something that you learn by practicing it. So don't wait to teach it. You do not need to be certified to teach restorative yoga in order to teach it. You could add a restorative class at the end of a different class format, or you can go ahead and schedule a restorative workshop. If that is still scaring you, yes, I do have a course on teaching restorative yoga. It's a fundamentals course. It's about 20 hours, if not 20 hours of video. It's probably 2 or 3 hours of video, and it's got prop demos of every shape, a prop library, several ready to teach class plans, several follow along class plans. If you just want to come take some restorative yoga with me, ways to design the room and lead either a restorative class or a series or a workshop. It's a great way to earn some money as a yoga teacher, is to develop a specialty in these softer styles of yoga, because this is what students need now and what students will always need. I don't think it's so easy to stand out as a kicking vinyasa teacher. I think it is easy to stand out and to make an appreciable difference. You will have students. Jody, I saw you were here. Jody had, oh no, that was Naisha. Naisha was telling me that she had students crying after the first restorative class. I think like several students were crying. And I told her that is actually one of the rare situations where it's good that people are crying in class, because they felt so relaxed. So if this is all sounding like something that you are interested in, there is a course called Fundamentals of Teaching Restorative Yoga at Comfort Zone Yoga. It's self-paced, it's practical, it's built so you can put a restorative class on your schedule next week and feel solid doing it. You've got the link in the chat. You've got the link in the slides that I have been working from. And I am here, of course, to answer any questions about that for you. But now I would love to see if you have questions for me about teaching restorative yoga. I've got some canned responses, some questions that I think people would like answers to. And I'm going to start on those, but go ahead and type in. Oh, good. I see some of you are asking questions, which is great. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that and pull up my notes on the questions I think people would have. One is, what if I don't have enough props? And Jody, I know like your gym. Oh, thank you, Jody, for the testimonial in the chat. Jody's gym was ordering props. I'm not even sure whether they got here, but you don't need quite as many props as you think. I mean, look, I pulled out the towel and the blanket from my linen closet and was able to do some restorative stuff with them. The goal, if you don't have a host of props, is to raise the floor to meet you using anything that you do have. You could ask your students to bring 2 beach towels and a blanket, or 2 beach towels, 2 tea towels and a blanket, and you could get pretty far with a really great restorative workshop or class with stuff that your students could be bringing for themselves. So when you're raising the floor to meet the body, we're looking for every part of the body to be supported. Remember, nothing on the cold, hard floor. Folded blankets can do most of that work. And most studios and students could bring their own. If you're like me, you have more towels than you know at home. We did a major empty nester downsize move a year ago. Y'all, we had 24 towels deep in linen closets that I didn't even know we had. I was ready to stock a restorative yoga studio right there with that. A stack of blankets can be a bolster. Um, 2 blocks and a rolled up mat can work together to fashion a bolster. Even cushions off your couch, your throw pillows, bath towels, like I said, beach towels are great. Those all count. One trick I love is the blanket ribbon, where you fold a blanket long and narrow, or you roll it up, and it can be like a half bolster, or you can wrap it around you. For those of you who are in the prep station, go to the search bar in Comfort Zone and search for blanket ribbon, and you'll see some examples there. Also, if you don't have props, you can do some prone things, some face down shapes, like a supported child's pose, where the floor does a lot of the work for you, or you can use the wall, which is another way to do it. So start with what you have, prop up everything, and you can add over time. I see some good questions in the chat. Let's see. Is there such a thing as too much silence when teaching restorative? Probably not. I think if you see your students getting restless, lifting their heads up and looking around, or everybody is snoring, you probably need to give them just a gentle reminder to come back to this side of the edge of consciousness to stay awake. But then, yes, I think a little bit of quiet, a lot of quiet goes a long way. Kamara says, sit in silence for the remainder of the pose. I try to integrate a message at the beginning of class. Yes, I think that's really good. And you could touch back on that lightly, but we're not trying to wedge an entire yoga class theme, a la teaching yoga beyond the poses, into every single shape that happens in the restorative class. It just would be absolutely exhausting and overwhelming for your students. Let's see other good questions. Princess and the P, Monica, yes. I encourage students to take the time to set up their props well, but a few of them will just toss a crumpled blanket under their head. Any tips? That is such a great question. Yes, my tip for them is to treat it as an upgrade and to view yourself as a first-class flight attendant and to come over and say, great news, we just got a seat for you up in first class, and let me bring you your warm towel and your butter nuts to eat and, a glass of champagne, and let me fold that blanket for you. Sometimes I'll put it as this. I have an idea about how we could make this even more comfortable for you. Why don't we see how this goes and you tell me how it feels? And if you don't like it my way, you can go back to your way. I think a little bit of that, and your students start to understand, oh, she's not just saying it. Like she said, Princess and the P, like she actually means it. And so I should follow along with the instructions. I think men do this maybe just as much as women do in class, but I do believe as women, we're conditioned to put others ahead of ourselves, especially we eldest daughters. And we think, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's just fine like this. You need to get big. You need to be that person who always does expect the finest, who wants the best. And you need to set yourself up for absolute success. You will rest better if you be a taker. Just for the next hour, be a taker. So that's all language that I might use there. Jody, great question. We finally got our bolsters in at the gym. The students love them. Question, how do you handle a loud snorer? This happened to me recently and I freaked out. I didn't want to touch him, but it was disruptive to others. And this points to a fantastic question that matters a whole lot in every class, right? Where is the line between allowing our students autonomy and agency and letting them have their own experience where we aren't micromanaging them and still preserving the sanctity of the experience for the group? And there are all kinds of classroom management situations where we're walking on that line. For snoring, this is what I do. And those of you who are with me at the Berkshire Yoga Festival heard my whole spiel. It was like, when we are playing on that edge, that lower edge, the edge of consciousness, you might mess up. And the messing up is you might snore. And if you snore loudly for maybe more than 5 deep breaths, I am going to come and squeeze your ankles. And if you feel me squeeze your ankles, that might be a reminder for you to roll over onto your side until you feel like you're back awake. Or you can set those, if you have somebody who's really snoring, you could come over, tap them gently, and just move them to their side and say, like, here's a shape I think is perfect for you. You get the mega upgrade you're going to take a side lying version of Shavasana or a side lying supported shape, and you prop them up with a bolster in between their knees, shins, and ankles. You prop them up with a pillow and with something to do with both their top arm and their bottom arm so that they feel comfortable, and you let them be there instead of where everybody else is. So I think a cue early on, Jody, that if you snore, you can expect to have your feet squeezed, and that will be your cue to come out of it, is a way to do it. And it might even be useful, like I just said, I hear the gravel truck coming. It might be useful to say, if I hear he's snoring for more than a few breaths, because that's not for the snorers. That's for everybody else in the room who is subjected to the sound of the snoring. They know she's not going to let this go on forever. They might even count, and then they'll hear you moving over to give the foot squeeze, and that would help. Hopefully that's a good answer for you, Jody. The snoring was so loud and went on for too long. I ended up walking near him to help wake him, and thankfully it worked. Great. Yeah, I think that's another way that you can do it. Back when I taught college English, that was the way. It's like if the group was off topic, you would just go stand by them, and suddenly they would get back on topic in group work time. Let's see, at Kamara, at my other location, they don't have blankets, just 9 bolsters, blocks, and straps. If it's a gym and they have towels, you can use towels. You can also encourage your students to bring some. I would have sent you some of these towels, these 2 dozen towels that I had in the closets in my house, but they went to the donation center. I think a DIY would be useful. You also could go to a thrift shop, to Goodwill, and probably get some old linens that you could then carry around if you wanted to do a mobile thing. Or you can make your restorative class hyper exclusive, where there's only room for X number of people, where X is the number of people that you personally have blankets for. So there's always a workaround there. I'm going to take another peek at the other questions I thought y'all might have. There's still a few minutes here if you have some other time. Let's see. Yes, I had drafted one of these like, oh, this is kind of the opposite of the snorer. How do I keep a restless student from bailing? First, know that restlessness is normal. And I think if we can normalize that for the students, then that is really helpful for them. You could say, like, there will be a period here where you will feel restless. That is just a phase that you will go through. It is not a failure. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. When your body finally gets still, then your mind often protests and it's looking for things to latch onto. You could talk about Chitta Vritti Nirodha, how the fluctuations of the mind will become more evident, more prominent when you get quiet. So if we can normalize that up top, that can be really useful. Then when it does happen, the students can think, Sage said this would happen, instead of like, I suck at restorative yoga, this isn't working. So setting the expectations up top, we're taking very comfortable naps. Your only job is to stay on this side of actually napping. And if you fall asleep, don't worry, that's going to be okay. If you see somebody fidgeting, you could guide a very small adjustment, like shifting a blanket or moving an arm instead of a full reset, or drop a very gentle and remember to come back to your breath cue. For the student who feels anxious in stillness, we can offer more security and not less, like an extra blanket over the body, a shorter hold if they need to switch a wall behind them. Eye covers can stay optional. That's good trauma-informed teaching. Some people feel closed in with them. And it's just good to say a few times, if this feels uncomfortable, you're not doing it wrong. Stillness takes practice. And that one sentence can keep people in the room. Lily, you're asking a great question. Lily is a graduate of teaching yoga to athletes. Well, she will soon be a graduate of teaching yoga to athletes, and she's in the July cohort of Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing. So I'm excited. This is a good question. Have I ever used hot stones in restorative? I have not, but I could see very pleasant ways to incorporate stones. Or, hey, if you're into like gemstone stuff, you could incorporate that. I have definitely seen people include essential oils. For the oils, I would say this. If you're going to add in another layer of sensation, like smell or even touch, I would make it very clear that this is happening early on, so that if people are extremely scent averse or scent sensitive, they don't come at all. And so that their expectations are managed. I can't imagine people not being interested in like holding hot stones in their hands in that propped up wrist support that I showed you with my yoga blocks. That would feel fantastic to me. So I think that's great. Anything to look at or avoid if we use them? In the massage world, there would be some rules about making sure that they're kept clean and that we're only using them on the one student. I couldn't imagine you bringing in a crock pot for every student, so I'm also not quite sure how you would keep the stones warm throughout, but just noticing the way that the temperature changes from its original heat into cooling off could be really interesting. Cool stones would be another way to go. I think a cool stone over the third eye point can feel so fantastic, especially if you then cover it up with a ace bandage or the face wrap or one of those tea towels that you would have your students bring. So those might be some really great ones to add on. Great question, Lily. I've got one more question for you that I had anticipated. So let me read it and give you my answer, and then I will start to wrap us up. It is this: how do I sell a studio on putting restorative yoga on the schedule? And here I can tell you, as the yoga studio owner of 15 years, speak the owner's language, lead with the owner's language, which is student retention. A great ending, great Savasana is what students remember, and restorative yoga is where you make every ending unforgettable. Your students will rave about how they felt, about how deeply connected they were, about how it was like the whole class was Shavasana. They will come back, they will bring their friends. Owners will notice that the class holds its students and fills up early. And this also can fill a real gap. As you know, many studio schedules are quite full of effort-based classes, and restorative is the recovery side that students are hungry for, especially in the summertime or heading into the fall and then holidays. What time is not a busy season, right? Overhead for the studio is usually tiny because they already have the blankets and the bolsters and the props. And the restorative can feel like a real treat that pairs beautifully with the active classes that are already on the schedule at most studios. So my advice for pitching a workshop or a series is to not just pitch the concept of balance and restoration, but pitch a pilot, like offer to teach a workshop that then leads into a 4-week restorative series, or offer to teach a series that then could become a biweekly class or even a weekly class, depending on the population concentration in your area. All of that is going to depend. Lily says, what is the best day to offer a restorative class? You would probably be right to assume that the natural downtimes, the natural like tamasic and yin kind of times are good times. So a Friday afternoon or evening can be really good. Saturday afternoon or evening can be really good. Sunday afternoon or evening could be really good. I could even see trying in the weekday slots on the later side at that like 7 o'clock, 7:30 time. I would not do restorative at 6 in the morning. I probably wouldn't do restorative mid-morning, but I might do a gentle yin and restorative hybrid at a mid-morning time, or even a mid-afternoon time could be fantastic. Again, depending on the population, where you are, like if everybody is working a day job or if they have very different schedules and demands, you could do a mid-afternoon and call it like nap time for grown-ups. And I could even see a description that was talking about how our kids in daycare get to have nap time, kindergartners get to have nap time. Grown-ups don't typically get to have nap time, but come to nap time for grown-ups, and we will practice restorative yoga, and you will feel like this is the right balance that your life needs, so that you are always in that sweet spot between effort and ease, so that you aren't just comfortable with discomfort, but you also have learned to develop comfort with comfort, and to lean into the softness that makes you more fluid and flexible and resilient. So these were great questions. Thanks, y'all, for asking them. I love it. We do these calls every month, and next month it's going to be a book talk. I have a book coming out on July 14th. I guess that is a little bit more than 2 weeks away. It's called Yoga Off the Mat, and as the title implies, it is about incorporating yoga philosophy into daily life. If you, as a yoga teacher, were a fan of Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses and Companion Volume 2, you will also love this book. It is a general population book, so I hope that you will tell your students about it. If you have students who have seemed interested in learning more about yoga philosophy and learning how yoga can give them tools to self-regulate, to know themselves better, to feel better connected and liberated and free, then this is a book for them. Again, it's called Yoga Off the Mat. I co-wrote it with Alexandra Desiato, my co-author on Teaching Yoga Beyond the Poses. And I'm giving a book talk about it as our next comfort zone conversation. So I would love to see you there. You can RSVP in the zone, or I'll put the link underneath this. Thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate your presence, and I'll see you next time.